Everyone is touched by pain. It is the uninvited guest, the sudden storm, the quiet ache that is woven into the very fabric of human existence. We all know loss, disappointment, heartbreak, and failure. They are the shared curriculum of our lives. And yet, the aftermath of these experiences is profoundly, mysteriously different for each of us. Two people can walk through the exact same fire of loss. One emerges, bearing a scar that slowly fades to a silver line, and a memory integrated into a life that continues to move forward. The other remains trapped within the blaze, the same hurt replaying for years, the smoke clinging to their every thought. This divergence raises a quiet but essential question, one we are rarely taught to ask ourselves. What is the invisible alchemy that transforms one wound into wisdom, while another festers into a hardened knot of bitterness, regret, or fear? And Buddhist wisdom does not see this as a mystery of fate or a lottery of personality. Instead, it points to something far deeper, a place within our own power. The answer lies not in what happened to us, but in how the mind relates to what happened. Tonight, our aim is not to surgically remove pain, for that is an impossible task. Our purpose is to understand it, to sit with it, to listen to its story, because genuine understanding is always the first step toward release. In the Buddhist view, there is a crucial distinction, a key that can unlock the prison of our own making. Pain and suffering are not one and the same. Pain is the raw, unavoidable friction of existence. The body ages and grows frail. Relationships blossom and then end. Life, by its very nature, is a dance of gain and loss, of hello and goodbye. This primal sensory experience of pain is an inescapable part of being alive. Suffering, however, is an entirely different phenomenon, and suffering is the second layer, the intricate and heavy coat that the mind weaves around the initial pain. It is crafted from the threads of resistance, judgment, and relentless repetition. The Buddha taught that pain happens in the body and in the world of circumstances. Suffering happens in the mind. It is born from the moment the mind rises up and declares, "This should not be happening. This is unacceptable. It should have been different." Pain is a physical or emotional sensation, as suffering is the declaration of war against that sensation. This is precisely why two people can endure the same event and suffer in vastly different measures. One feels the sharp sting of pain, allows it to be present without judgment, and creates the space for it to eventually pass. The other fights it, denies it, replays the story of its injustice, and in doing so, keeps the wound perpetually fresh. Buddhism does not offer the false promise of a life without pain. It offers something quieter, yet infinitely more powerful. A way to stop adding the weight of suffering to what already hurts. Pain often begins with a singular event, a moment of devastating loss, a word that cut to the bone, a sudden, jarring ending. The event itself is finite. It passes in time. The mind, however, is a restless storyteller and does not always let it go. Long after the moment has vanished, the mind returns to it like a moth to a flame. It replays the memory, endlessly revising the script, imagining different outcomes. What I should have said, what they shouldn't have done. This mental rehearsal gives the original pain a second life, a shadow existence that can last for decades. In Buddhist philosophy, this is the fertile ground where suffering takes root. Pain moves through the body like a wave. It rises, crests, and naturally recedes if left alone. But suffering lingers when the mind, standing on the shore, keeps calling the wave back, demanding to relive its impact again and again. The mind takes the raw data of pain and weaves it into a story, and then it steps inside that story until it can no longer see the difference. This happened to me. This story begins to define us. This explains why I am the way I am now. Over time, the wound is no longer just something you experienced. It becomes something you are. The Buddha taught that the mind clings not because it enjoys being in pain, but because it craves the familiar. The known, even when it is a familiar torment, can feel safer than the vast, liberating emptiness of the unknown. Pain passes through the body. Suffering builds a fortress in the mind when the mind refuses to release its grip. When we hear the word attachment, we often think of pleasure, of desire, of wanting more of what feels good. But in its profound wisdom, Buddhism teaches that we can become just as attached to our pain. We become attached to the story of our loss, to the sting of betrayal, to the weight of regret. Not because these states are enjoyable, but because they have become the dark cornerstones of our identity. After enough time, the pain feels like home. It explains our caution. It justifies our anger. It gives a solid shape to the narrative of our life. To let it go then feels terrifyingly dangerous. If the pain leaves, if the story dissolves, who are we without it? The Buddha observed that this form of attachment is what turns a fleeting experience into a fixed identity. What happened solidifies into who I am. This is why releasing deep-seated pain can feel like a betrayal, like we are erasing our own history, diminishing the significance of what we went through, or losing a fundamental part of ourselves. But letting go does not mean forgetting. It does not mean denying that the pain was real and valid. It simply means loosening the deeply held belief that the suffering must be carried forever as a monument to the experience. Pain does not ask for endless remembrance. It asks for understanding. It asks to be fully met, and then to be allowed to rest. At the very center of long-lasting pain, there is often a single quiet sentence, repeated like a mantra in the hidden chambers of the mind. This shouldn't have happened. The mind argues with reality, a reality that is unchangeable. It rewinds the past, demanding a different outcome, pleading for a different script. But reality never answers. This internal, unwinnable struggle, this war against what is the true and inexhaustible source of suffering. Pain comes from life. Suffering comes from fighting life. Every time we resist what has already occurred, the mind reopens the wound. Each silent no to reality is a reliving of the original trauma. This is why the concept of acceptance is so profoundly misunderstood. In our culture, it can sound like weakness, like passive resignation, like declaring that what happened was acceptable. But true acceptance is none of these things. Acceptance is not approval. It is the courageous and radical act of acknowledging what is, without adding the second layer of war to the experience. It is to finally lay down your arms on a battlefield where you were the only one fighting. The Buddha taught a simple, powerful truth. What we resist, we relive. What we allow, and we begin to release. When the fist of resistance softens into an open palm, the pain is no longer fed by the energy of struggle. It is finally allowed to complete its natural, unfettered movement. And in that space of allowance, something unexpected and beautiful appears: relief. When pain is met with pure awareness, something fundamental shifts. Not instantly, not with a clap of thunder, but gently, like the turning of seasons. Awareness does not try to fix the pain. and it does not analyze or judge it. It simply offers its quiet, unwavering presence. Instead of asking the story-driven question, "Why is this happening to me?" awareness asks the sensory, immediate question, "What is being felt in the body right now?" This small shift is transformative. When pain is felt directly, stripped of its narrative and the fuel of resistance, it begins to lose its suffocating grip. The body, no longer fighting, is allowed to process the sensation naturally. In Buddhism, and this is the difference between observing the storm and drowning in it. Observation creates space, and in that space, there is air to breathe. You become a compassionate witness to your own experience. You feel the sensation. You notice its texture, its temperature, its movement, its intensity rising and falling. Pain is no longer a monolithic enemy to be vanquished. It becomes a temporary, flowing experience moving through the vast sky of your awareness. The Buddha taught that awareness loosens the bonds of suffering not through force, but through clarity. When pain is fully seen, without being pushed away or clung to, it no longer needs to scream for your attention. It has delivered its message. And in that clear, compassionate seeing, the pain begins to soften not because life suddenly became easy, but because the mind finally stopped holding on so tightly. Healing does not mean erasing the past. What happened, happened. The memory remains, but its weight, its charge, its power over your present moment can fundamentally change. In the light of Buddhist wisdom, pain leaves not because it is forced away, but because it has been fully and compassionately met. When pain is allowed to be felt without resistance and without a story, it completes its natural cycle, like a wave that rises from the ocean, crests in a moment of full expression, and dissolves back into the water from which it came. And this is how pain is transmuted into wisdom. Instead of bitterness, a deep understanding grows. Instead of a tightness in the chest, there is space. Instead of being trapped inside the wound, you are standing peacefully beside it, having learned all it came to teach. Pain ceases to be a prison. It becomes a profound teacher, not a teacher that demands obedience, but one that illuminates the nature of impermanence, the reality of our shared vulnerability, and the boundless capacity of the human heart for compassion. The Buddha taught that everything that arises will eventually pass, so long as it is not held against its nature. When pain is finally understood, it no longer needs to stay. If pain has stayed with you longer than you expected, it is not a sign that you have failed. It does not mean you are weak, and it certainly does not mean something is wrong with you. Lingering pain is not a personal flaw. It is a sacred messenger, knocking on the door of your awareness, asking to be seen, heard, and finally allowed to complete its journey. In the Buddhist view, suffering less is not a personality trait you either have or don't. It is a skill, one that can be learned, practiced, and deepened over a lifetime. You are not broken for hurting. You are human, learning the ancient art of holding your own heart with tenderness. If this reflection spoke to a place of truth within you, you are welcome to share your thoughts in the comments. And if you wish to continue exploring the paths of calm, clarity, and wisdom for meeting life's inevitable difficulties, I invite you to subscribe. Pain is a visitor that arrives unannounced. Suffering is the choice to bolt the door and insist that it never leaves.